All right, you guys are 1080.
Ready to roll?
Yep.
Can you tell us your name, please?
I'm Lee Sands with Sandstorm Training.
And what is Sandstorm Training?
I made this company about 3 years ago after 26 years of law enforcement instructing, and I provide training for law enforcement, civilians, military, anybody that needs it.
And what kind of training does Sandstorm Training provide?
My primary training right now is firearms training and tactical training.
And you say that, tell us about your law enforcement background.
I've been in law enforcement for 26 years. I started in a small county in the Everglades in Florida. Then I came to a larger agency here in South Florida. Been on the SWAT team for 10 years. I've worked homicide, been in the training division. Several of those were part-time duties and adjacent to other duties. But my entire career I've had tactics, firearms mainly, as my priorities.
And as a instructor, you also teach civilians, correct?
Yes, sir. I teach concealed weapons permits. I teach tactics, teach basic firearms courses. I see and cover just about every aspect of firearms that's current today.
In your experience as in law enforcement, do you ever run across a situation where the victim of a crime, when they're first encountering a police officer, they talk themselves into trouble?
Yes, sir. Especially whenever I worked homicide. We worked police shootings, we worked self-defense shootings, and of course homicides. And a good citizen who's involved in a self-defense shooting, this person is usually not trained and able to handle that stress, and that adrenaline dump, that fight or flight syndrome, all these things are still carried over even sometimes an hour or two after law enforcement arrives. And one of the key things that they do is just to run off at the mouth. I heard a comedian one time say when he was arrested, he had the right to remain silent. He just didn't have the ability. And that's true. This guy just rattles on and rattles on. And you know, even as a law enforcement officer, one of the things that I was sworn to do whenever I took this job was uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state of Florida. And those rights, sometimes the citizen does not uphold those, and they need assistance in this.
And when you say the rights, you're referring to the right to have an attorney present when any questioning is undertaken?
Yes, sir. The citizen has these rights, you know, their Fourth Amendment right to privacy, and their Fifth and Sixth, and the right to have attorneys present. And under that stress, they don't think about this. They haven't planned for this. They didn't train for this. They do all this training with their firearms, but they don't train their mind to prepare for the aftermath after the shooting, and having someone who is trained, such as an attorney, to be present to handle those needs for them.
In your training of civilians, do you feel that it's important to have an attorney present for any questioning?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those constitutional rights. Whenever a law enforcement officer is speaking to you, whenever they ask for an attorney, the questioning should immediately stop.
Now, Lee, when I ask you a question, you don't need to answer yes. It's a leading question. I want you to
That's
use
right.
that. Okay?
Okay.
So when I say you feel it's important to have an attorney, you say I feel that it's important.
Okay.
And that's kind of the direction we want to go.
Okay.
So let me ask you.
Sure.
Do you feel it's important to have an attorney present for any questioning?
Do I feel it's important to have an attorney present?
Don't ask yourself.
No.
Just go ahead and you're going to answer like I feel that it's
Okay.
important. Yeah.
Okay. I feel it's important to have an attorney present whenever a law enforcement officer is questioning you. It's part of those rights. It's part of those rights that I uphold as a law enforcement officer, and it should be the person's knowledge of their constitutional rights at all times. But under that stress situation, they don't think of these things, and therefore they need to have that person to fall back on to make sure that they're protected. We train again with the firearms all the time. We need to train our minds, have that phone number available in your phone so that when it happens, you already know who you're going to call.
Tell us about your knowledge of U.S. Law Shield.
I came around U.S. Law Shield approximately 2 or 3 months ago. I listened to the program. They sat down with me and other instructors, listened to the program. I was skeptical at first about the program, but as I listened to it, and my experience as a law enforcement officer, my experience in the last 3 years of teaching civilians, I've had one person each year. I've had 3 people in the last 3 years that have been arrested that I have trained. So whenever I was listening to this program of Law Shield and insurance and protection of your rights, I thought of each one of those individuals that I had trained who had been arrested. Out of the 3 people who had been arrested, only one of them had fired a shot. That was brought up in our meeting and discussion about this program, that most people never fire a shot. People think they only need this whenever a shot is fired. 2 of the 3 people never fired a shot. Somebody made up a story against them and knew that they had a firearm and used that firearm against them in the story to lie to police. And they were arrested, even though they had done nothing wrong. And if they had had U.S. Law Shield, they would have had somebody to represent them and taken care of this immediately.
Do you feel that this is a program that you could recommend?
I recommend it to everybody, the U.S. Law Shield program, to everybody that I teach. I recommend it to people I don't teach. If I know civilians and carry firearms, if you ever carry a firearm, you should carry the protection of U.S. Law Shield.
First, not bad, not bad. First round, very good. You did excellent. Just like I said, you tell us your name.
I'm Lee Sands with Sandstorm Training LLC in South Florida.
What is Sandstorm Training?
Sandstorm Training is a training group that provides training for law enforcement, civilians, military if needed. But primarily right now the big rush is civilian training with all the wants for concealed carry permits in South Florida.
Part of your training then is to provide concealed weapons permit training?
I provide concealed weapons permit training. I provide basic instruction, tactical instruction, and after 26 years of law enforcement training, I also continue to provide training for police academy students, law enforcement, military.
And in your experience of law enforcement, have you ever had a situation where an innocent or a victim has had an encounter with the police where they talked themselves into trouble?
My experience as a law enforcement officer, I encountered many situations where civilians did not know their rights and certainly could have used a qualified attorney in that area to make sure that their rights were maintained and law enforcement continued their job professionally, but the citizen also was protected at the same time.
And one of those rights that you're referring to is the right to have an attorney present when any questioning is undertaken?
When I was a homicide detective, I worked self-defense cases, law enforcement shooting, and the street homicides that occurred. The ones that I could remember the most where the citizen needed an attorney was the stressful aftermath of an armed encounter where they had to defend themselves to protect their family, protect themselves from an armed assailant. Therefore, they took a life in self-defense. Because of the fight-or-flight syndrome, they had increased adrenaline and was running off at the mouth. And a comedian one time said, I had the right to remain silent, I didn't have the ability. And that is a true statement when it comes to somebody under a stressful situation and they need an attorney there to protect them.
Are you familiar with U.S. Law Shield?
I came in contact with U.S. Law Shield approximately a month ago and had a meeting with them as an instructor and sat down with the staff from U.S. Law Shield, and I think I signed up before they finished telling me the story. Based on my experience as a law enforcement officer, as a lifetime gun owner, and just a person with common sense, this is a no-brainer. If you're going to own a gun to protect your life, you need to have U.S. Law Shield there to protect your freedom.
in your experience as a law enforcement and homicide investigator, or as a trainer, have you had any of your students in a situation where they needed have an attorney present?
In the last 3 years with Sandstorm Training, I've provided a lot of training for civilians, and people are getting involved in the concealed carry. And I've had one a year, so 3 in the last 3 years since I've been teaching a lot of civilians encounter law enforcement. 1 actually fired the shot, 2 did not fire shots. The person that fired the shot was completely justified in self-defense and was still arrested. The other 2 were arrested and had done nothing wrong, just being an owner of a gun and someone making a false accusation. The biggest problem that they had was Law Shield wasn't available at that time. And with that knowledge of knowing what happened to these individuals, I tell everybody that I know, not just students, everybody that I know, that if you carry a gun, you need to have U.S. Law Shield protection.
All right.
Do you want to do the peak spot? I'm a card-carrying member.
No, I don't know if that's...
Sorry, I love cheese.
I thought
I'm a firm believer. In fact, I'm a member and I carry it myself. Yeah.
Wait, let me just set it up. Okay, no, hold it up. No, you're good. Just do it right there. Like that.
Try not to smile so much.
No, he's joking.
this is smiling.
He's a homicide investigator. He doesn't smile.
I'm
Yeah.
a narcotics agent.
Oh, so then now you're smiling. Take it off. Okay.
You're in.
Anytime you are.
Go ahead. Just-
This is my U.S. Law Shield membership card. The nice thing I like about it is there's 2 numbers on it. One, if I have a general question, I can call them, they'll answer at any time. The bottom number is if I need them in an emergency, they send me an attorney. They don't have me call back tomorrow, anything like that. I get an attorney that night and they're through the entire process. What you have to do is just turn the card around. Anytime you're in contact with a law enforcement officer, hand them this card, your rights are spelled out, and they'll take it from there.
I want you to say, my name's Lee Sands, and I'm a U.S. Law Shield card carrier.
All right. My name is Lee Sands, and I'm a U.S. Law Shield card-carrying member.